welcome everybody to the Gamification Revolution. I'm your host, Gabe Zickerman. I'm coming to you from a rainy summer afternoon in New York City. Hopefully wherever you are, it's a little bit less blue and gray. We're joined today by Naureen Meraj. Hi, Naureen.
Hello.
So excited to have you and really excited to jump into some questions. You've got a lot of both personal and professional experience that I know everybody wants to hear, but in the meantime, all of you who are here on the Gamification Revolution for the first time, and if you're with us live, remember to log in with your Twitter credentials or your Facebook credentials so that you can join us in chat and live on video. Once you're logged in, you can click any one of these buttons, depending on which browser you're using and where you're coming from. You may see a bunch of buttons around the screen. Click on Submit a Question to ask a question of Naureen and I about any topic that you might have, or click the camera button. And if you have a webcam, Ivan, our intrepid producer, will bring you on screen and you can actually get to ask your question in person. We'd love to hear your questions. For those of you following along with us on the podcast or later repeat, thanks for being here. Obviously, you can't ask questions, but you can follow me on Twitter at @gzicherm, GZICHERM, and be sure to check out the resources at gamification.co. So, Naureen, let's get into it. NTT Data, which is the company that you work for, is probably one of the biggest companies that nobody's ever heard of. What is NTT Data?
So NTT Data, it's the 6th largest IT company in the world. It's a Japanese-owned parent company. It's a Japanese-owned parent company, NTT, and all things considered, fairly new in the North American sector. So we do anything and everything IT related. Great company to work for. I don't know if you have any specific questions regarding our
I want to talk more about you and what you do there. So, but you don't do IT consulting, right? What do you do for NTT?
No. No, you're right. I'm not a technologist by any means. I'm a behavioral psychologist, to put it mildly. Basically, I do run the gamification practice as well as our employee engagement practice. So what we do is we look at different business processes and apply gamification tactics to those areas. What I do specifically is I assess from a very behavioral, psychosocial sort of perspective on how these game mechanics will be most effective. What kind of behavior changes are we looking for to find the most optimal outcomes, depending on what those business processes are. So that's, I sort of start out at a high level, but then depending on, again, what the objectives are, I sort of assess those. And then I have a great team of people, technology experience and otherwise, that help me come together and come up with a perfect plan to, strategically make the most, a successful outcome.
I know that people are going to want to talk to you, and they're going to want to ask about, and I want to ask about your career path and how you got into the role of being the gamification expert and the behavior expert of the company, because this is exciting. But let's start by talking about the project, and then we'll talk about you. So I know that when we first met, you were talking about this project that you were rolling out at NTT Data. If you want to tell everybody what this main sort of gamification project is about and what was the sort of crux of your G Summit talk that you gave in April.
Sure. I believe you're referring to the leadership game that we've been working on. Yeah. So initially it started out as a employee engagement initiative. We were very keen here at NTT Data to make sure that we had an engaged employee workforce, and we wanted to know what their needs were and how to make them more engaged with the parent company, with NTT and NTT Data Americas, and also very productive and very collaborative and innovative employee workforce. So part of their needs assessment, we found that they were most concerned about their career development path. They wanted to make sure that they had a very clear progression within the company and an understanding of what it takes to be a good leader in the company. So skill training around that, and also recognition, for all the efforts that they put into essentially become good, wonderful leaders within the company. And, leadership skills are something that kind of spreads across every industry, every vertical, across the board. So, so that was one aspect of it. And then On the flip side, managers also wanted to track how they can keep up with all their employees, all their direct reports who are taking the proactive initiative to better train themselves to be good leaders within the company, and then definitely recognize them for that. So hence, in a nutshell, we started working on this leadership game, and it's a samurai theme-based game, being a Japanese company. We have basically, it allows for people to go into different modules and learn the different techniques and skills it takes to be a good leader. So yeah, it's a great way for people to assess their own leadership skills, as well as learn new skills to make them better at their job.
Let me ask you this question, because you said something in there that I'm not sure that I think is worth a little bit of diving in on. So you said that some clear path to progression is important to people in their career. Can you talk more about that? Why is that the case?
Mm-hmm. So, everyone wants to have something to strive towards. People like to have goals, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they would necessarily want to have a managerial role within the company. It could very well just mean, becoming an expert in their field. So, in any sense, having certain leadership skills, to be able to attain that level of expertise is important to people. It gives them something to look forward to every day. It gives them something to aim for. And I think it really makes them feel like they have an investment in the company, and the company has an investment in them.
Do you not have to design, therefore, aren't you really talking about like maybe many different tracks? Like wouldn't there be like a bunch of different directions that someone might want to go, not one size fits all here?
Absolutely, and we actually looked into that and tried to understand that better, and that's why we came up with leadership, because leadership really spreads across every aspect of that, right? Having leadership skills will allow anyone from any vertical, from any position, any status, to just better enable themselves to be, again, expert in their field, or just be able to lead projects, whatever it is that they're doing. I mean, those skills are just, I think, almost necessary to be able to move forward, no matter what path you're taking, no matter what position you're in, no matter what your background is.
Do you think it applies equally well to people who are already kind of higher up in the organization, like, and lower down? Because there's, kind of two schools of thought about this, right? You're trying to cultivate and find the natural leaders in the line staff, in the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees of NTT Data around the world. And then you've also got people who've already, become leaders to some extent through whatever process they've gone through. How do you design something that speaks to both of those kind of needs, or can you do that at all?
Sure. I mean, honestly, when we first started putting this together, it was really geared towards our main employee base, not so much the higher leaders or the higher executive leaders of the company necessarily. It was a way to encourage the employees to, again, have something to strive for. But, with what you're asking, even executive leaders or higher managers, it's a great way for them to assess their leadership abilities. What kind of leaders are they? Where can they strengthen certain skills? What do they need to work on? So even if you've made it somehow to the top, there's always room for improvement. Not to say that people aren't already doing a good job, but like I said, if there's something that you could do to help benefit, others, whether it's better communication, everyone perceives things differently. Everyone, maybe does things a little bit differently as far as how they lead. So it's a way to just help people understand one another better, and work better on a more social level.
Do the higher up executives, do they play your game? Do they play the samurai game?
Well, they're definitely supporting it. I don't believe they've started playing it quite yet. They're more on the support side of it. A lot of our leaders have, their part of it is to add the incentives, for the employees to participate. So they participate in a different way. Their role is a little bit different, and how we've sort of put together this game. Not that they can't play it. It's definitely available to them. We started piloting this game in small sectors of the organization, so it's not quite everyone is playing it yet. But so far, their main role is to add incentives, add We have like trivia that comes up that they can add on a weekly basis if they wanted to. Kind of keeps people motivated to tap into the game even after they've completed all the modules, for the leadership skills. So it keeps them sort of all participating. Everyone gets to kind of track who is taking the time to perform better at their job. So it's just a different role right now.
It sounds like they're more coaching, using it for coaching and mentorship. Okay,
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about the actual game itself? It sounds like we know that there's some trivia in it because you mentioned that, right? And there's obviously some progression. What else do you do inside of the Samurai Leadership game at NTT Data?
Yeah, so besides, having the different modules and the quizzes and the trivia, we actually have a great collaborative platform that's incorporated into that. So it gives people a chance to really connect with one another and, give each other tips and different strategies and form groups and all of those things. But one really unique aspect of the leadership game is that we have this concept called share only points. So whereas within the game you're trying to gain the most points to become the high leader on the leaderboard and win certain incentives that we give out, there's this huge incentive to share points, and you get a number of points to actually give to other people for doing a good job, for helping out, for mentoring, for anything that you feel is worth giving out points to. So those are points that you can't keep for yourself. You actually have to give them out. And that's also taken into consideration when managers look at how people are collaborating.
Have you noticed?
So I think that's a pretty unique
interesting.
aspect.
I love this kind of karma point design. I talk about it a lot in like my book, The Gamification Revolution, which just came out a couple of months ago. For those of you that don't already have it, you might find it interesting. But I guess my question for you about that is, have you seen any particular behavior as a result of this? Are you tracking metrics on performance that come out of leadership game? Have you seen any particular kind of behavior out of this that's been especially noteworthy, interesting, driving the organization forward?
Yeah, so the leadership game was I should probably say I should probably add that it's sort of like a part two to our gamified platform called Socially. And that was kind of like a Facebook for the enterprise, but with all the gamified components, like the leaderboard and the karma points and all those. So we actually launched it in, we have a huge employee base in India, and we launched it there. And we did see a lot of great results come out of that, just several Center of Excellence groups that came out of that, people putting in more innovative ideas that saved clients money, as well as our increase in revenue and money saving, in our own organization as well. Referrals increased, employee referrals increased by, I believe, 30%. Attrition, which was huge in India, decreased by 50%. So, these are things that we saw when we added these employee engagement type initiatives that were gamified, that, brought about a little bit of healthy competition, but the incentives and the collaboration really helped people become more loyal and invested in the company that they're working for, NTT Data, and it really benefited us because now we had this employee base who are very knowledgeable in what they've been working on for a long period of time, and also contributing, with giving creative and innovative out-of-the-box ideas that really helped with different client projects as well as internal projects.
Those are just like amazing stats, Naureen. Those are amazing. I mean, that's got to get the attention of management. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your job, and we've got some questions queued up about that already in a minute. What can you say though about this whole international question about your design? I mean, you guys are a big global organization. India, Japan, the Americas, all over the world. What kinds of considerations went into building this, thinking about the world, and what sorts of outcomes have you taken away? What sorts of takeaways have you gotten when you're talking about gamification for a global workforce?
Well, it's definitely a way to bring a global community together. I mean, it's a really big world out there, but how do you reach out to people and be able to connect with them so it doesn't feel so you don't feel so isolated being in so many different parts of the world. We haven't had a chance to pilot our leadership game everywhere quite yet. It's still fairly new. So, like I said, we did a similar initiative in India with Socially, and now the leadership game we've started piloting here in the North America sector. So we still have a lot of results that are coming from that, but it is giving people a chance to really, do a lot of knowledge sharing, share best practices across the globe. As gamification is catching on in different parts of the world, I think it's more I think we're more involved with it here than we are in a lot of like the European or Asia Pac.
You mean in the
Oh,
US?
can you? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, I thought
No
I
problem.
lost you there for a moment. Yes, in the U.S. and we have some in Canada as well. So, but yeah, we definitely see people coming together and really taking advantage of this platform to reach out to one another and very quickly access best practices and tips and just knowledge
So
across the
one,
board about different
and
concepts.
so one question that comes up, one question that's just come up in chat from Dutch. Thanks so much for the question, Dutch. Is about how to make talking about the nuts and bolts of doing this program, because I think everyone's impressed always, Naureen, blown away by all the stuff that's going on over there at NTT Data. So exciting. But what about nuts and bolts? What about some really tactical advice that you can give other people looking to think about this project? What did you learn in the trenches sort of at the beginning about how you take this idea, this concept for leadership gamification and actually roll that out that would be important things that advice that you could give other people looking to do it?
I think the biggest thing, and again, coming more from a behavioral and psychology background, I have to say is the incentive aspect of it. You have to make sure that it's something that really speaks to the individuals that you're targeting. So what I mean is, we've experimented with extrinsic rewards as well as intrinsic rewards, and we found that it's the intrinsic rewards that really, really have the most impact on people. So, we've given out things like iPads and iPods and those type of things, in the past, but now our focus is to make sure that the incentives are more based on recognition and what really makes the individual feel like they're a part of something big and being recognized in a big way. So, whether it's, getting time with an executive leader, or manager to, hash out a very personalized career path, for example, or getting the chance to go to some kind of exclusive conference. I mean, these are the things that we now contemplate and consider and offer as potential incentives. So, and that can change, yeah, but still, it's just giving you an example of what we felt
You
was the
found
most
that those
important.
kinds of things, those sorts of access rewards, I talk about this model of status, access, power, and stuff. Is it those kinds of access rewards that really have driven the biggest behavior change in your audience?
Um, I would think so. I think again, just how many materialistic items could you possibly want, right? I mean, how many iPads would you want? How many iPods would you want? But yeah, I think the biggest drivers were the individualized attention coming from someone who has a certain level of authority within the company and who could make a difference in your career path within the company is huge. I think that, and I'm not saying that's going to be important to necessarily everybody. There's always certain people that are not quite engaged in that way, and there's only so much you can do about that. But I think across the board, for the majority of the people, that's just huge to have that kind of
Like
attention and
time with the
recognition.
CEO, obviously, really, really big thing for a lot of people are more time, more attention with their
Absolutely.
managers. I guess so. Let's shift gears because I think this is equally important. And thanks for that question, Dutch, because I think it's major. So for many people out there, and there's a question from Sasha, who's a speaker at G Summit, a regular guest to the shows. Thanks for the question, Sasha. Hopefully we'll get you on camera at some point. So this is a big question, I think, for a lot of people who, like you, find themselves in a situation where they'd like to drive engagement and behavior inside an organization. So NTT is a big company, and Japanese, and we can talk about that in a second. What did it take to actually get buy-in from the leadership or get the leadership to get behind you and be supportive at NTT Data? And what advice would you have for other people looking to marshal the resources of their large enterprise to support a gamified initiative for employee behavior change or engagement?
And so, I think I was pretty lucky that when I was brought in, we already had a certain level of support from our executive team members, to run an initiative like this. I mean, that's the whole reason why I was brought in, was to do an employee engagement initiative, which then I started using gamification tactics, to increase the participation level. So, but, to answer your question, you definitely have to make the executive leadership team understand some of the metrics behind that. So obviously a little bit of research on, what kind of benefits, whether it's employee engagement or whether it's gamification, and often they go hand in hand, what kind of benefits they have. So as I started the initiative, initially it was, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily want to call it experimental, because it was something that we were really, really, you know, very much already considering as important. Obviously, we believed in its importance, but just really tracking the progress on how employees, how much more or how much they were participating, how much more involved they were, what kind of ideas were coming out of it. So really just tracking all those metrics. So even if you get a chance to experiment with something like this, even on a small scale level, which is what it kind of started out as, it's just really important to track those changes and what's come out of it, and then really get a good grasp of the best practices that come out of it. So like, for example, really quick, we had this initiative that came out of this called Employee Council, which allows our employees to have a voice in any issues or concerns they have within their work environment. It could be anything, really little from, we, like in India, I know these were like big concerns. We need new chairs or new desks so we can have just a better physical working environment, to anything from a processes-based type of issue. So it gives them a chance to voice that, but it's not like a place to complain. They actually come up with their own solutions and then present it to their management team. And we've strategically taken this concept and come up with innovative workshops that we take all over the world to get ideas from even junior level employees who, again, may not have the access to higher level leadership team members, and give them a chance to really voice their solutions and what they can offer as creative ideas. So these are the type of things where when we get when we get good feedback and good outcomes and good ideas, we present them to our management team, and they can see where things have worked well, what kind of benefits we've gotten from these ideas that have been incorporated into any kind of project or a client initiative, and just really tracking. I mean, metrics is key, and that's probably the hardest thing to get out of a gamified initiative, because it's kind of abstract.
So, but did you have to, like, when you were first setting out to do this, and I know that Imran, who you work with at NTT Data, is a big champion for gamification internally. So you're lucky to sort of have an exec who comes out of the swinging out of the fences. Did you have to kind of put yourself on the line a little bit internally and say, I know that we can raise the metric of reduce turnover, and I know that we can raise the metric of employee engagement X, Y, and Z, or did you or was it something that you could sell in a more abstract way without having to make those sorts of like commitments?
I think it's probably half and half. I think there are some people who are good with the abstract, sort of feel of what it can do. And Imran is probably one of them. He's very much of an outside of the box thinker, and is already supportive of these type of initiatives. But then, there are people who actually want to see more concrete, concrete things coming out of it, like revenue and efficiencies and time saving and those type of things. So I think it's just it's a balancing act. You have to be really passionate and very enthusiastic about and really have a belief in the whole concept. And then once you start getting people's interest peaked, and as you get a chance to sort of experiment or even initiate such a project, again, it's just a matter of every step of the way tracking it and showing that, okay, even if it's slow progression, it's positive, and this is what we're getting, and over time it actually has a bigger impact. So I use this I guess what do you want to call it, sort of a way of just explaining to people, how it has like this indirect impact where, if you have a happy employee base, and in a nutshell, I'm just going to, really describe this, but if you have a happy employee base, then eventually it leads to, profit and revenue for not only yourself, but the client that you're working for. And, within that, there's a bunch of little steps. And part of it is the gamified, application of engaging the employees and getting them to feel like they're really a part of something, that they're invested in. They invest themselves in the company, they become loyal to the company. And then and it goes both ways. The more that they can put out as far as innovative ideas and good work, then the company reinvests back into them, and then it's really a happy case for all involved.
I think especially, it sounds like, especially if your organization is in the customer service business, whether you're an outsourcer or you've got lots of frontline employees, we've been seeing many of the most interesting attempts at employee engagement coming from those sectors, because every one of those touch points, every one of those hundreds of thousands of NTT Data folks out on customer sites, building new things, doing business process outsourcing, they have a direct potential effect on the relationship between the company and its paying partner. So it's important to make sure the service level is high. And so I just want to shift gears though with you for a second, because Naureen, one of the things that I think many people who certainly watch this show, listen to the podcast, or the Gamification Revolution, come to G Summit, read the books, is they're really interested in how they make gamification core to their career. And you have a sort of interesting how they make gamification part of their career. And you have a particularly interesting career path that has brought you to this point where it's like part of your job description. Can you tell everybody about how you ended up here today?
Sure. So I actually come from an educational background. I started out as a guidance counselor, where I used gamification techniques, and we call them token economies, or that's at least one term for it. Token economy within the educational field, where working with students, I would use gamification techniques to just encourage them to do things in a more timely manner, studying for tests, preparing for college, those type of things. So eventually, when I found myself in this company, they were looking for someone who they wanted to not necessarily have a technology background, but the psychology background, where they could engage the employee base. The very first thing that came into mind is, okay, I'm just going to use the same techniques I did with my students, because at the end of the day, your needs are the same. Your psychological needs are the same. So I started applying the gamified techniques of, you have your points and your, incentives, but really just a way to get people feeling like that it's worth their effort. So similar to what we do all over the globe, the innovation workshop type of scenario, where you have different issues, and you present them, and then you let employees really strategize different solutions around them. So that's basically where I came from, using those techniques by giving people a voice to participate and feel like they're important. That's basically how I started, established myself in this company, when we saw that the gamification techniques were very successful, and it was really helping get those innovative ideas across and getting employees to participate. Then we started the practice on gamification.
So now you're the expert.
And since then,
I know that you get to talk to other people about it as well, right? NTT has you go out and talk to partners as well about it, right? And become an evangelist for this idea.
Yes. Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, we definitely ate our own dog food first. We experimented with it internally, through different innovation workshops and employee engagement initiatives, and things like the socially collaboration platform and the leadership game, all of those things. But as we started to see success coming out of that, and speaking at different engagements like the G Summit, as we piqued interest out of other companies and their CIOs or CEOs or whatever, we started presenting this to them. And now we definitely have a lot of interest in these platforms and how we've leveraged them for different achievements within our own company, and now we offer that to our client base as well. And often we customize it obviously for them. but it's just a great basic platform to,
That's
kickstart
awesome. And
any
you know, we're
initiative.
we're just about out of time, but one last thing, a comment from Felipe. Thanks for joining us, Felipe, about the importance of fun. And he talks about how, he believes that every workplace, everything that you do has got to have fun in it to keep it engaging. What's your personal philosophy on the importance of fun at work?
Oh gosh, I think that's probably the most important things. I mean, if you can't enjoy your job, that is only it's sustainable for only so long. So yes, gamification is actually a great way to get people engaged and enjoy their job. I think there's just a higher level of you know um, participation and investment from the employee base if they're enjoying their job and having fun going to work every day. So yeah, it makes everyone more productive. I'm all for adding, gamified components into any job, and as long as it's done strategically with core objectives, that you're aiming for achieving. It's just a great way to just have a great
And
happy
there's
employee
nothing,
base,
absolutely,
happier,
and
I should
it's
say.
obvious that you're very happy doing what you do, and that's infectious. Thanks for being with us, Naureen. For those of you who are interested in following Naureen and NTT Data, you can follow them on Twitter at NTT Data Americas on Twitter. Thanks for being with us, Naureen.
Thank you for having me.
Oh,
I
so great to
appreciate
see
it.
you. And thanks all of you for joining us on the Gamification Revolution. I'm Gabe Zickerman. You can follow me on Twitter at @gzickerm, and you can find out more about gamification, including watching dozens and dozens of videos from experts at gamification.co. We'll be back next week with another edition of the Gamification Revolution, where we're talking about all the different ways we can create employee and customer engagement. In the meantime, have a great week, everyone. Keep having fun. See ya.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.